I used to believe silence was a comfort, something soft to slip into between disagreements, a gentle space where breathing came easier. But that belief unraveled the night Julia told me the truth. It was late. The apartment carried a faint scent of jasmine, though I couldn't remember lighting any candles. The glow from the living room lamp stretched across the walls, casting long, slow-moving shadows. I sat at the edge of the couch, half focused on my email, when she walked in. The moment she spoke, the atmosphere shifted, dense, almost touchable. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice sounded small, like it might break apart if she spoke any louder. I didn't look up. I'd learned, after years of tiny disappointments and quiet miscommunications, that some words needed stillness before they were answered. "Something happened," she continued, each syllable scraping its way out. She moved around the room, pacing like she was trying to hold herself together. "I didn't mean for it to, but it did. And now I can't undo it." I set my phone aside and finally met her eyes. Julia, my partner for 6 years, the woman I had shared mornings, nights, and whispered promises with, looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, as though whatever she carried had bent her out of shape. She waited, searching my expression for anything: anger, softness, recognition. But I gave her nothing. Not because I felt nothing. I felt too much. My chest was tight, my fingers numb, my thoughts loud and spiraling. But silence can speak more honestly than rushed words ever could. Sometimes the quiet screams what the heart can't phrase. Her hands shook as she hugged her arms close. "Please, just listen." I did. But I didn't answer. I let the quiet expand between us, stretching like dark storm clouds that refused to move on. The apartment felt smaller. The lamp flickered. My own heartbeat drowned out everything else. For a while, neither of us made a sound. No shouting, no tears, no justifications, only a silence so sharp it felt like it could cut through the years we'd shared. And in that wordless space, everything hit me at once: betrayal, confusion, pain, and an unexpected sense of clarity. Some moments don't need language. Some truths only settle into place when nothing is said at all. Eventually, time seemed to resume. Julia kept glancing at me, her eyes wide, as if waiting for me to collapse or forgive her or rage, anything. I remained still, letting her confession hang in the air like dust drifting through a beam of light. She finally sat down across from me. The distance between us felt impossible to cross. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "It was one mistake, but it's there now, and I can't erase it." I gave a small nod. Not out of acceptance or understanding, but because acknowledgement was all I had to offer. Any words I tried to form would have betrayed what I truly felt. She twisted the hem of her sweater, fingers pale from the pressure. "Please say something. Anything. This silence is killing me." I leaned back and breathed out slowly. "I hear you," I said. Relief flickered across her face like a fragile spark. But I didn't add more. I let the quiet return, heavy and undeniable, speaking for me in ways I couldn't yet manage. Sometimes the silence between sentences lands harder than the sentences themselves. And in that silence, everything we had, our years together, the trust we had carefully built, the fault lines I'd always sensed but never wanted to name, pressed down with its own gravity. Hours slipped by disguised as minutes. I watched her wrestle with guilt, with shame, with the crushing effort of forcing the truth out piece by piece. The specifics didn't matter. Only the size of what she carried did. Every unspoken fear, every trace of regret, every flicker of panic, I felt them not as accusations, but as clarity finally surfacing. And then it hit me. What I couldn't do. I couldn't forgive her. Not yet. I couldn't pretend the ground beneath us hadn't shifted. Something fundamental had changed in that room, in that apartment, in the quiet that had swelled until it felt like its own presence sitting between us. I stood eventually and wandered toward the window. The city lights outside wavered like shards of cracked glass. Julia watched me, her eyes begging for something, anything, to signal that whatever we had wasn't broken beyond repair. But I gave her nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I let the silence speak for me, let it echo louder than anything I could have said aloud. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't revenge. It was simply the truth, our first honest moment of the night. As midnight neared, the room seemed to cool, though the heater hummed steadily in the background. Julia had folded herself into the corner of the couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her eyes weary and wet. Everything she'd confessed had poured out like a flood, but the breach had formed long before she opened her mouth. I could see it in the slight shake of her hands, the hitch in her breath, the way she couldn't look straight at me. I sat across from her. The space between us wasn't physical anymore. It was measured in years of trust and shared history. An empty chair sat beside mine, untouched. An unspoken offer for closeness that I knew she wouldn't accept. Not now, maybe not ever. I tried to hide it, she whispered, voice barely there. I didn't know how to tell you. I said nothing. I let the silence take the words, hold them, turn them over like an impartial judge. Everything she had admitted, everything she hadn't, every tremble, every avoided sentence. The quiet soaked it in and cast it back at her with a weight she couldn't deflect. I saw her shrink beneath it, realizing that speaking the truth was only the beginning. The consequence lived in the quiet afterward. Minutes dragged into something that felt endless. The clock ticked steadily, marking the tension in the air. My palms rested on my knees. My eyes followed her subtle movements, the press of her lips, her fingers knotting and unknotting the blanket, the way the shadows carved lines of fear and remorse across her face. At last, I spoke, my voice low, almost incidental. Julia, I need time. Her head lifted, a flicker of hope waking in her eyes. Time to forgive, she asked. I shook my head. Time to understand. Time to see what's left when the silence is louder than we are. Her expression fell, but I saw recognition there too. She'd prepared herself for rage, tears, chaos. Instead, I offered stillness, and it cut deeper than shouting ever could. I moved back to the window, watching the city lights reflect my own reflection in the glass. We'll figure out what comes next, I said, not as comfort, not as reassurance, just as fact. But tonight the silence says more than we can. She remained curled on the couch, small and unmoving, letting the quiet settle over her like cold water. And for the first time, something clicked into place. Confessions are delicate things. They can shake the ground, but it's the stillness afterward, the space around them, the pauses, the wordless responses, that reveals everything that truly matters. The night stretched on. The apartment stayed hushed except for the soft hum of the heater and the distant pulse of the city. And in that silence, I understood something I hadn't before. Not all screams have sound. Some live in the gaps between words, in the weight of everything left unsaid.